what is going to be the next step for me? Where should I go? When in your nursing career did you sort of wake up one day and decide, I don't want to do this anymore? Like what was that journey like before you even made the transition into technology?
I met a woman who was playing in a band. I think she was a bass player. So she just went to different bars playing in bands and loved it. And she took a coding course. And then all of a sudden, she was the speaker at this Google developers group. And I was like, wow, if she can do it, why can't I? 1 billion people take coding boot camps. What could I do to prove that I deserve to be there? So once you apply for your job, don't just set it and forget it. It's something you need to keep at. So even if you get rejections, keep going. If you do get a rejection, ask them if there's anything you can improve on. Treat it like a second job. Apply for a job a day or a job a week or whatever. The most important thing is to just keep going.
Catie, thank you so much for coming on the Career Confidence podcast today. I am very excited to get stuck into this conversation. Before we jumped on, we were having a little brief conversation about your experience in the tech industry and the journey so far. So I am absolutely delighted to be sharing this with our audience today. But before we dive into the episode and we get into all of the nitty gritty, can you give a little bit of intro into who you are, your journey, and what brought you here today? So over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Strigenz. I am speaking today on the podcast because I made a career transition into cloud engineering. So I worked as a nurse in the healthcare space for about 8 years with a little bit of a work break in there when I traveled, but about 8 years, and came to Australia back in 2017, still working as a nurse. And then at some point, things took a turn over the pandemic. My values just sort of changed, and I thought, maybe try something else. So I started learning coding through a boot camp, and then eventually ended up where I am now, which is with my company Casna, doing cloud engineering, specifically for Google Cloud.
Right. There's so much in that because you just made it sound so simple. Yeah, I just went from nursing, now I'm in a cloud engineer role, and I know that everyone's going to be sat there going, how? Because this is the fascinating thing. Like, I always say to people, you always will have some transferable skills that you can take into another industry. So you mentioned that your values change. So let's sort of start there, because I think there's a lot of people listening to this right now that might be at a career crossroads and go, what is going to be the next step for me? Where should I go? When in your nursing career did you sort of wake up one day and decide, I don't want to do this anymore? Like what was that journey like before you even made the transition into technology?
So essentially, yeah, I was working as a nurse for 8 years. I had a great experience. Met some of the best people in my life. It allowed me to immigrate to Australia because of my nursing skills. But as COVID progressed, especially during the lockdowns, which, to be fair, during the lockdowns, I was busy. I was working quite a lot, as you can imagine. But it was really, really challenging work. It was really exhausting. Also, as you can probably imagine. So I have always, especially since in the last few years, even pre-COVID, started thinking, I've got other skills. Nursing is a very physical job. Not that I wanted to leave healthcare, but, what's my future? Will I still be able to do this when I'm older? And I've had a couple back injuries just from lifting patients and whatnot. So I just wasn't sure how that was going to work out as I aged and wanted to settle down a bit. So I started thinking within the healthcare sector, what could I do? An office job, or there's a area called nurse informatics. There's a whole bunch of things that I thought about. But my mom worked in tech back in the 80s, 90s. She worked for a company called Sun Microsystems. And she was one of the only female engineers at the time. She eventually pivoted into sales, but she did learn coding on the job, which was amazing. And I always felt that was really inspiring. At the time, though, when I was a child, she actually pushed me away from tech. She did not want me to get into it when I was younger. I was a kid. I didn't really know what I wanted to do anyways, but she worked crazy long hours. She had to work twice as hard to get half as far. So she just didn't want that for me, which is absolutely valid. I do think the sector has come a long way since then. Obviously, there is still growth that needs to be done. But I think we're in a better position than what my mom was going through in the 80s and 90s, that's for sure. And my partner as well, he works in cybersecurity. So not quite the same field, but a very adjacent field. So when I kind of mentioned at the end of one of the lockdowns in Victoria, I think it was after lockdown 6, so very much near the end, I wanted to learn coding. And I thought it was just going to be kind of like a fun little COVID skill, like baking bread kind of thing. It was a very basic course, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It was 2 weeks, I think. And he was so supportive. He immediately set me up with a desk, monitors, everything that I might possibly need. And I did my little class. I made a very basic web page about scuba diving, and I loved it. So again, still hadn't decided that I was going to quit my job just then. I decided to take another course and another course and another course. And then it was around the third or fourth course that I was like, I feel like I can do this. I'm not going to quit nursing just yet. I have to pay my bills, but I'm going to see what I can do. So I started going to events, specifically here in Melbourne. And that really is what made all the difference for me. I spoke to other people who had career changed, and they had inspired me. I met a woman who was playing in a band. I think she was a bass player. So she just went to different bars playing in bands and loved it. And she took a coding course. And then all of a sudden, she was the speaker at this Google developers group meeting. And she was just this big hot shot. And I was like, wow, if she can do it, why can't I? So yeah, I hope to also be that for maybe your listeners as well.
Mm-hmm. You've just illustrated so many crucial points that we've discussed numerous times this podcast so far about the whole idea of you cannot be what you cannot see. And
Yep.
your whole journey there, the way you did it, like just started with a basic coding course, thought, oh, this is easier than what I thought, then continued it, then had that, developed that self-belief, then started networking, going to events, speaking to other people. It's just such a perfect example of what can be achieved when you have that desire to do something different and you put yourself out there and you have the courage to begin. So I just want to pause and just say congratulations for taking those steps, and 100% you will be the inspiration for so many more women and men, I'm sure, that are thinking about transitioning career and getting into a career in technology. So what I want to sort of dive into now is obviously, you've been in technology now for a little while. What has your experience been when you were sort of, I guess, starting to apply for jobs? Talk to me a bit about that, because I think a lot of people always come to me and say, how easy is it to go from doing an online course to suddenly getting an actual job? Did you have to take a pay cut? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing was taking that first step. I enjoy talking to people, but I also love being in bed by 8 p.m. And I was working still as a nurse. So I knew what I had to do. And I knew in order to get that first job in particular, I needed to meet people. A billion people take coding boot camps. What could I do to prove that I deserve to be there, basically? So I, at first, jumped right in, and I was going to meetings or events, I should say, multiple times per week, but it was really exhausting. And I burnt out pretty quickly. And I realized I still need to do this, but I can't do too much too soon. So I limited myself to going to one event per week. And at one of those events, of course, I met somebody who helped me, as I said. And the first job, I did get denied from quite a few jobs. I tried in particular to get internships, traineeships, associate level, because I didn't have any experience besides the boot camp, and I still got denied for quite a few. It was at one of those meetings that I met the woman who worked in a band. She got into coding, into her position, I should say, through a specific program called a traineeship with Mantle Group, which is what I ended up applying for. And it was a traineeship that was aimed at getting women and gender diverse people into tech, or people who had taken a break from their careers or whatever reason. So it was aimed at people specifically like me. I applied, did a bit of a Hail Mary. I'd been denied so many times, and I didn't really think, I was hoping, of course I was hoping, but you're so used to being denied, and getting that first job is really hard. I didn't really have my hopes up, but I got an interview back. And for me, one of my skills from nursing is that I can talk to people. Maybe I hadn't had the tech skills yet or the coding skills all that well, but I can talk to people. So I knew if I could just get that interview, at least I could maybe get my foot in the door. And that interview went super well. I got the traineeship, and then from there, the rest is history. I will say, I was working as a nurse for 8 years. I was working in management. I did have to take a pay cut. I basically went from management to an internship. Um, Luckily, I'm very fortunate that I had a really supportive partner. We spoke about it. I don't have a mortgage to pay and I don't have children. So I am very fortunate in that regard. Not everyone has that. But I willingly took a pay cut knowing that there would be a light at the end of the tunnel. Unfortunately, I didn't know that there was going to be a cost of living crisis at the same time, but you know, it is what it is. I'm still not quite at parity with my nursing career yet, but I'm very close. I tend to think of it a bit like a slingshot, if you will. So I went back a little bit so that hopefully I can zoom much farther forward. I do think there is more of a future for me in tech than there is in healthcare.
Mm. Again, really inspiring. And, I'm sort of sat here and sort of reflecting on my own career personally. I went from beauty 10 years ago into a trainee recruitment consultant role and, very different industry, but a bit like you, I could talk to people. I was very used to having conversations, meeting complete strangers, making them feel very comfortable. And I think that is such a transferable skill. But the thing that really stood out to me when you were just speaking then is the fact that you are sending countless resumes and not getting interviews or being rejected. I think that's when so many people give up. And I think the amount of people that just go, oh, this isn't for me, or they just get so beaten down by the rejection. So when you were going through that process of applying, constantly sending your CV, how did you find the discipline and the strength to keep going? Because I think it does come down to your mindset a lot when it comes to these types of things. So what were you telling yourself during that time, and how did you get through that period?
Yeah, there's one job in particular that I remembered that I, at the time, thought I really wanted. I really wanted this job, and it was an internship made for people who were career switchers. And I got through the first interview, and I got through the second interview, which was a written interview, I should say. And then the third was a coding challenge. And again, I'd only done a boot camp, a little bit of React, but compared to the average developer, I mean, just, yeah, not very good. So I tried to do this coding challenge and it took me days and I knew it was all not well. It was not good. And of course, I didn't get the job. And I remember being kind of angry because this is supposed to be an entry level position for people who are career changing from boot camps. And this crazy hacking challenge was given to me. And I was like, what is that career? What is that culture going to be like at that business if that's what they expect right from the get go? And maybe they were just trying to gauge skills to see, how they could help you. In hindsight, I think maybe that was probably what was going on, but I was very discouraged. And I remember being really upset. And again, I'm so fortunate that I had such a supportive partner who really kept me motivated. I am very lucky that I still retained my nursing job. It was really exhausting to work. I essentially thought of it as two jobs. I would work my nursing job 4 days a week. And then after work or on my days off, of course, I would do 3 to 5 hours every single day. And I thought of it like a job. And that is kind of what kept me motivated. I'm also kind of the person who needs lists and to-do lists and checking things off. I'll create to-do lists with items that I've already completed just so I can get that endorphin of checking something off already. So having something to do every single day was also really important for me. Knowing that, okay, well, I applied for one job today and maybe I don't get it, maybe I do, but there's always tomorrow.
That's such solid advice. I think the actions you take every single day, the choices you make will lead to the outcomes eventually. You've just got to keep going. You've got to have that belief in yourself. And ideally, yes, if you have the right people around you, that can be an incredible help, but we can't just rely on that. At the end of the day, it's us that, we're the ones that have to take responsibility. We're the ones that have to press send on our resume. We're the ones that have to dig ourselves out of the hole when we feel that, maybe that little bit of lack of self-esteem building up. So I just, again, want to pause and just say, like, that's such an inspiring story. And I think people listening to this will be like, wow, she just kept going and now landed a great job and had that successful career pivot. So how are you finding the technology industry? How like, I mean, I imagine it's so different to nursing day to day, but what are some of the pros and perhaps what are some of the cons that you're experiencing so far on your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. It is very different from healthcare or retail or really any other non-corporate industry. A couple of things that were big differences for me, especially in the beginning. There was quite a learning curve because even various terms and phrases that people use in the corporate sphere, I've never heard of before in my life. I would ask, in on the Slack channels, SIG stands for special interest groups for a special channel. I read it SIG. I was like, what? Cigarettes? Everything is very new. So in the beginning, the first month or so was really just getting used to um, an entire new culture. Being able to go out and get a coffee and not have to tell anyone where you're going and no one cares blew my mind. Knowing, exactly when you're going to be working, amazing. That is one of my favorite things. I always thought I would never be the person who could do a 9 to 5. I really glamorized the idea of not having a desk and holding myself back. But wow, I love my desk. I love my 9 to 5. I love knowing what I'm going to be doing every day and when. That is definitely one of my favorite things. Also, it completely depends on where you're working, of course. But my number one factor, besides, of course, having a job, was looking for a job with a really nurturing culture, a really good culture. Healthcare, as you can imagine, was a bit of a challenge during COVID. It was a very stressful time. It is what it is. But I really wanted to work somewhere that would allow me the space to learn and grow. Obviously, because I was new in my career, but also tech is an ever-changing area. You may learn something today, but then it's generative AI tomorrow, and so on and so forth. You always have to be learning. And I really wanted a space where I could feel like I could learn without resentment, pressure. I mean, there's always a bit of pressure, but a really negative area. And luckily I found that. And with that became, a weird, I hate to say work family, but a little bit. I really enjoyed going to work, which also made learning a lot easier. On the other side, some cons. Like I said, I did take a pay cut. I'm hoping to reach parity and bypass my nursing pay soon, but I'm not there yet. That's obviously been really challenging, especially during the cost of living crisis. Also, I do miss a lot of things about my past career, healthcare. There's a lot of things to love about it. I never lost the love that I had for healthcare, and I specifically was in neurology most of the time, so learning about the brain is fascinating. But I do find that tech is just as fascinating. It's just in a bit of a different way. I also think you do create a bit of a special bond with patients when you're a nurse. As you can imagine, you see them in their most vulnerable moments. I don't necessarily have that in a 9 to 5 corporate job. It would be probably a bit weird if I'm, getting too personal with my clients and so on and so forth. But yeah, I would say those are the major ones.
Yeah, and I think ones that a lot of people would agree with who are working in the industry, but I think that the thing about technology that really has always fascinated me and interested me is that you really can have an impact on people's lives from a much broader scale, because you are working on products and websites and things that people interact with on a daily basis. And a lot of it is, when I sort of think about UX design, for example, it's very almost like psychology based. And actually some of the best designers that I've seen and have gone on to advance in their careers come from that sort of psychology background, because it's understanding the customer experience, the customer journey. Okay, why are they clicking that and not that? Why are they doing that, not that? And it's very much like, I guess, problem solving, but also thinking about the end user and what you're sort of trying to create. So I think when it comes to technology and tech roles in general, they are very creative roles. And, again, it's just what you apply, you get what you put in, right? So if you're going to work every day and you're applying yourself, you're constantly learning and growing and wanting to do better, you will have a fantastic career and you'll really will enjoy it. And I think what you just said then as well about the rate that technology is evolving, no week's the same, especially now with like the advance in AI. I mean, that is absolutely mind-blowing where we're going to go over the next few years. And I think we are going to see more disruption and more change in this next decade than we have in the last 10. It's evolving so quickly. What are you sort of like thinking about? Maybe you haven't sort of looked into it, thought about it too much, but if you have, I'd love to get your thoughts and opinion. Like, what are some of the things that maybe excites you about where technology is going? And what are some of the things that maybe scares you and you're sort of thinking, oh, that could be a little bit of a problem? But yeah, let's talk about the excitement first. What excites you about the future of technology at this stage?
Yeah. Well, going back to generative AI, I think is amazing. It also does scare me, which I'll touch on in a second. But I do think it is really amazing. before I joined the tech sphere, before I switched careers, tech was just, it was just this word. I knew coding and I knew what AI was and I knew little bits and pieces. But I kind of thought when you hear it, like on TikTok, for example, oh, she's in tech, but there's a
Mm.
billion different jobs within that sphere. So I'm in cloud, but I learned software development. I'm now learning cloud. Um, we've got data engineers, we've got generative AI, like we touched on. There is so much to do, and you will never get bored. If I'm learning cloud now, and I do love it, but if 5 years, 2 years from now, it's not really serving me anymore, it's just as easy to pivot somewhere else as long as you're willing to put in the work. Like you said, you have to be the one who is is doing the work and taking the next steps. You can't count on anyone else in the end. And it's the same, keeping up with the tech sphere and learning, it's going to be on you. And that's going to be one thing that's really important. It can be really hard, but if you're a motivated person and you know how to stay motivated and you get excited about those sort of things, it's a positive. So I think that's definitely, yeah, a positive thing for tech for sure. And also, as you mentioned, tech can do amazing things. Again, generative AI, not to bring it up again, incredible. I'm really excited to see where that goes. Tech can do a lot in the healthcare space. So who knows what my future will bring? Maybe I will be able to combine those two, my past career and my current career. Because there's a lot. I heard of a product where people essentially, where when you go to a hospital, you might get a scan to see if you're having seizures, for example, but you have to do it in the hospital. I heard of a product that you can take little probes, basically, just little stickers, go home, keep it on you, and it will see if you're having seizure activity. You'll wear it for a few days, and that information will go directly to a physician. So you have the like absolute up-to-date data that you'll need to hopefully, or hopefully not, I should say, get diagnosed with epilepsy and treated if so. I think that's amazing. That wasn't possible 15 years ago. That's huge.
Mm. I completely agree. And I think, some people are saying, there's a lot of negativity going around at the moment about the future of tech and the future of AI. And some people are saying, it's gone too far. We need to pull it back. We don't understand it enough. Like, we need to stop this now. Other people are saying, look, it can be a force for good. I think it's how we use it as human beings. AI is only going to evolve and turn into something that we create, right? It's only as good as the user that is putting the data and interacting with every single day. And I like to think that humanity is more good than anything else. So I'm hoping and I'm optimistic that the future of technology and where it could go will lead to only positive things and will uplift humanity as opposed to tear it down. It's not going to be like the Matrix or Terminator or anything like that. So, hopefully we won't go down that path. But for me personally, I think it's anyone who wants to maybe get ahead or advance, utilize it in your business, utilize it in your career. I use ChatGPT on a regular basis just to help me now even find candidates or discover new businesses, or just ask it questions. I'm just like, oh, I don't know that answer, I'll just type it into ChatGPT. Google need to do something quickly, because I'm definitely turning to ChatGPT now more than I am Google, which is interesting. But again, that just is proof of what we've spoken about, of how you've got to constantly evolve and upskill if you want to stay ahead. And I think that's why a career in technology appeals to so many people who are motivated and disciplined, because it's exciting to feel the need to constantly improve and upskill yourself. I personally think that that's why tech is such an appealing career to so many people. But let's go back. So if you're somebody listening to this right now and they want to follow your exact path, Catie, they're just so inspired by your journey. Maybe they're a teacher or a nurse, or somebody in beauty, say, what's the sort of the first step that person should take today if they want to start thinking about a career in technology? And was there any particular courses that you took that you'd recommend?
Yeah. I think the first step is deciding that you want to do it. So who's ever listening and you've come to that conclusion, that's amazing. And that's a really hard conclusion to come to, actually. If you're 1 year, 2 years, however many years into a career, and you decide you want to switch after what feels like you invested so much into your previous career, that's huge. So I think that's really commendable to begin with. Second, I would take note of your soft skills. So, for example, what do you use in your current career, whether it's teaching or healthcare or retail or whatever? what do you use on your day-to-day basis that isn't necessarily specific to that career? So, if you're a teacher, of course, you're maybe teaching math or economics or whatever it is, but you are speaking to children, you are managing crisis, you're doing all sorts of things that are very transferable. So I took notes on my phone about skills that I had that I thought might be relevant. Then I would start looking into courses that you can take and learn skills from. So I took a boot camp called She Codes. There's one here in Australia, which is amazing. There's also an international, purely online one. They're completely different companies, but they have the same name. Two other courses that I would recommend that I had some colleagues go through, Leywagon, L-E Wagon, that's 2 words, and General Assembly. If you're interested in data or cloud, I think they have courses on those. I didn't take those, so I can't be sure, but they seem to be really good. If you don't have the money, there's also a lot of free or very inexpensive tools you can find. For example, I live in Victoria, Australia. At the time, I'll be honest, I'm not sure if it's still going on. I think it might be. But at the time, they were offering coding courses for women and career transitioners completely free. It was part of a government program. I would look into that or something like that. Or even just on YouTube. YouTube is an amazing tool. Like you mentioned, technology is a tool and it's completely up to the user. So use it. So Google, how to, HTML basics, CSS basics, React basics, Ruby, whatever language you want to learn. There is so much information. You don't necessarily have to pay. I paid because I need structure and I'm just that kind of person, but I wouldn't say it's even necessary. As if you have the skills and the grit and the motivation, you can do it on your own for sure. Once you take your course, or at least once you sign up for your course, the next step is going to be a bit challenging. You're going to have to decide how you want to commit to that course. Are you going to quit your job and do it full time, which means you get done faster, you can focus on only that, but you're not getting an income? Or are you going to maybe cut your hours or still work both? I worked both. It was really hard. But I really needed that money. So it is what it is. I don't regret it, but it was definitely a challenge. I had friends who quit their jobs entirely just to do their course. Also very challenging because, of course, they didn't have any income coming in. Once that's finished, I would start looking into entry-level positions or internships. So look on Seek, look on Indeed, entry-level, associate, those sorts of keywords. I also look on meetup.com for any events. So whatever field you're specifically interested in, whether that's software development, data analyst, cloud engineering, whatever, there are events specific to those specific interests. Even specific, sorry to say specific so many times, even specific languages such as Golang or Ruby, they'll have meetups just on that. Go to those meetups, whatever you can reasonably achieve / want to go to. Don't do 5 days a week like I tried to do. It's not achievable. 1 day a week, 2 days a week, and meet people. Put yourself out there. It is really hard in the beginning, but it's more the intimidation than anything. But people go to those meetups to network. They want to meet other people, and they'll want to hear your story. My first meetup, which was a GDG event, it was for International Women's Day. So it was all about women career switchers. And I asked a question. I don't remember my question, but I mentioned how I was a nurse and I was trying to switch careers. After that, people came up to me once the speakers were finished. They wanted to hear my story. They wanted to help me. They got me in touch with the right people. They pointed me to other meetups. I had a woman even help me with my LinkedIn, edit it, make it look better for tech because it was obviously nursing focused previously. People want to help you and they want to hear your story, especially if you're willing to share it. So that was huge. Meetups were absolutely the number one best thing I did besides actually learning the skills, of course. And then follow up. So once you apply for your job, don't just set it and forget it. It's something you need to keep at. So even if you get rejections, keep going. If you do get a rejection, ask them if there's anything you can improve on. They might not respond to you. They might have 400 applicants and you might get ignored, but it is what it is. That doesn't mean you should try or give up and stop. Apply, treat it like a second job. Apply for a job a day or a job a week or whatever. The most important thing is to just keep going. And then eventually getting that first job is just the hardest part. Eventually it will come. I have no interest in switching my jobs just yet, but I will say I've been at my current position for about 10 months now, which was my first position after switching. And I have recruiters coming to me all the time with new jobs. Once you get that first job, it all falls into place. That was wordy. I'm really sorry. I hope that wasn't too much.
No, that was absolutely perfect. And I think that that has been the best description of how anyone can change careers I've ever heard, because you've been through the process yourself. You know exactly what it takes and exactly what to do. And it's really funny how there's a couple of things I want to put out there. You mentioned obviously the meetups. I think they are absolutely crucial. Getting your face out there, getting known in the industry. Is a small industry, like you said. It's why I started Sisterhood Club, because we want to run events, and we want an event space where women can come to explore what it's like to have a career in tech and be around other women who have made that transition or are in working in tech, because again, cannot be what you cannot see. So I think networking events are absolutely huge. And anyone listening, and yourself as well, Catie, come to a Sisterhood Club event. We're going to be hosting one soon. The other thing I thought you said was really, really powerful is obviously apply, but also the follow-up piece. You know, you've got to be visible, because the amount of applications that recruiters, HR, hiring people get inundated every single day, you know, you unfortunately your CV could be at bottom of the pile. So don't be afraid to call up or just send a follow-up email. Be visible, be at the front of people's mind. That's how you're going to stand out and get ahead. It really is being proactive. I think that's the key thing there. It's like we need to like move past this thought process of, oh, just send a resume, do an online course, and I'll get a job. It doesn't work like that. You really do need to take responsibility and control of your own life and your own career. And I think everything you've just said there proves that it can be done. It's not necessarily easy. It's not going to fall in your lap. You have to go and get it. But if you want something bad enough, it is absolutely achievable, and you are walking, talking proof of that. And then the other thing I would just add as well is that you're absolutely spot on. Once you get your first job and your foot under the door of a company, welcome the rush of recruiters. And it's so true. And that's how, Catie, you're going to advance in your career. You're going to be on incredible salary, and I'm sure you are going to go on to do amazing things in the future, and I can't wait to see where your career ends up. But look, on this podcast, like, we are very, very passionate about getting women into the technology space. So my final question for you is, what would you say to the women out there that maybe have thought about technology being a man's world and not something for women? What advice would you have for women out there that maybe thought about it but thought, I don't think it's for me? Why should they pursue a career in technology, in your personal opinion?
If you're interested in tech, it absolutely is for you. There is space for you. Even if you have to make that space, people will appreciate your opinion and what you bring to the table. Women bring a lot of amazing skills and different perspectives that the tech space needs. They need to hear your perspective, especially if you're a career switcher. If you're creating, let's say, AI, and you're only using one bit of data from one very specific subset of the population, that's all it will know. It needs everybody. It needs you. I would definitely recommend coming into the tech space if you can. There may be days harder than others, or you might get really lucky and be surrounded by amazing, supportive people. You just have to come and find out. And if you are faced with challenges, which you certainly will be, whether that's sexism or just regular job challenges, all you can do is persist and show them what you're worth, show them what you bring, because you bring a lot of amazing things, and it is absolutely worth it.
Amazing. And I hope that everyone who's listening to that feels pumped up, motivated, inspired, and definitely reach out to Catie and follow her on LinkedIn. And I know that myself and all the listeners will be so excited to follow your journey and to see what happens for you next. But Catie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your story. And we'd love to have you back on this podcast maybe in a year or so's time to talk more about how your career is being developed. And hopefully we'll also see you at one of the Sister Club events as well. And I no doubt get you on stage as one of the speakers, because you definitely will inspire a lot of women, I'm sure, to consider careers in technology. So keep doing what you're doing. We need you. We need your voice. So please just keep spreading the message. It's so important.
I would love to come to one of the events and speak later for sure.
Thank you so much. And Catie, just before we wrap up, where can I send people? Where should they go to find out more about you and follow your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend connecting with me or following me on LinkedIn. I go by Catie, but my full name is Catherine. So Catherine Strigenz, CatheRine Strigenz. It's a very German name. Sorry, it's probably difficult to spell, but reach
We'll
out.
put it in
Don't
the links.
hesitate.
It's in the links.
Yes, put it in the link. I had a lot of help in the beginning. A lot of women, like I said, helped me with my LinkedIn, connected me to jobs, connected me to the right people. I would love to be that for your listeners. So do not hesitate. I'm happy to give any advice. Just give me a message.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoy these episodes, the number one thing you can do to help us grow and keep spreading our mission and message is to hit the subscribe button. And if you have time, give us a quick rating. Appreciate each and every one of you who tune in every week, and we look forward to bringing you many more episodes this year. Take care.